Greetings, everyone. My name is Dominic Soborowski, and today I am going to be recording and presenting this video lecture on Marxism. So, stay tuned and bear with me. We have a fair amount of information to cover, and I am hoping to do the best that I can to help you explore this concept. So, Marxism, what can we say about Marxism? Well, Marxism is based on the economic and political theories of the 19th century philosopher Karl Marx. Okay, his theory stresses that humans are separated by classes. Okay, so we have the working class or the proletariat who have been influenced by history and by art and by pop culture of the time. To believe that they should remain in this class. They are the working class. And what do I mean by art and whatnot? Well, have you ever seen nowadays, for example, have you ever seen if you jump on social media, sometimes you'll see those memes, and they will say something along the lines of, not everybody should be a doctor or a lawyer. Some men have to work with their hands. And it usually shows a picture of a guy working on a car with dirty hands next to a child or something like that, or teach your kid how to work with his hands or something like that. Any of those memes, that would be a very good example of how history or art or pop culture is kind of subliminally letting the working class know that, hey, here's where you are. We're going to kind of trick you by saying it's okay and it's very important for you to remain part of the working class. So that is one half of this dichotomy. Okay, then we have the other class, which is the bourgeoisie or the upper class. Okay, and these are like the factory owners. If you look at the working class is on one end, and then the factory owners are on the other end. Okay, now the bourgeoisie or the ruling class, I can also call them, they are the ones who write and influence this history and pop culture and art. And that the working class, this is how they get their ideology from it. They are looking at, hey, if we write this stuff and if we send it out, and the working class will continue to live in their caste and their socioeconomic situation, and we will then in turn be on the ruling class and be able to live under our ideological rules as well. So, and it's also important to know that the economy is directly influenced by the conflict between these two castes, right? There's always this conflict between the workers and the bourgeoisie, and a back and forth, right? So that is a big thing that Marxism is all about. Okay, Marxism is about this conflict about between these castes. So Marxism also attempts to show that there's always this conflict between these two classes. Okay, because on one side we have the bourgeoisie, the oppressors or the haves, and then we have the oppressed or the workers or the have-nots, and they are always in this state of conflict. Okay, so the oppressors and the oppressed, right? We have these two, and how the oppressors have power, and they want to retain that power, right? They want to retain to be the ruling class. Okay. And they do that by, once again, as stated earlier, by influencing history and art and pop culture, okay, in order to kind of set some norms down that the working class can live by, okay? So Marxism focuses on this struggle. Now, it's important to note that much of this theory rests on the assumption, and this is important, that the assumption that the lower class will ultimately stay under the control of the oppressor no matter how hard they try to elevate themselves, okay? Now, they may be able to temporarily elevate themselves, but ultimately they will then descend back down into the working class, and the dichotomy will have kind of like a homeostasis almost, okay? Everything will be right in the world, okay? So that is the whole conflict side and the whole caste or class side. Now, I do want to mention or at least touch on another part of Marxism, okay? And that is that Marxism also focuses on a term called commodification. Okay, it simply means treating something as a commodity by being able to put a value on it, some kind of intrinsic value or something on something. Okay, now when I say something, I don't want you to automatically think that it is just a material possession. Sure, a car can have value, a house can have value, jewelry can have value, but other concepts can have value too. Intellect in certain situations can have value. Um, Labor, how much work you can perform, can have value. So there are some things that aren't materialistic or that aren't material that will have value. Okay, so and when we talk about labor too, because Marxism was big on the whole labor side of it, um, you know, labor can definitely be a commodity because not only of the type of work that's performed, but the frequency of the work that is being performed or the amount of the work that's being performed, okay? And the type of the amount of the labor can have a value then attached onto it. But there are also other things that can have a value on it, like I was just talking about. But there's a whole nother part of it too. Genders can have a value put on it depending on the situation. Races, sexual orientation, um, bravery or toughness or something like that. For sure. Okay. So just know when we're talking about commodification, we're not just talking about, for example, this stapler has value to it because it's a stapler. No, the stapler could have value to it because of the work that it does, whereas it affixes papers together. Thus, that makes it more valuable, right? But that is a physical piece of something that has value. We are also looking at other abstract ideas such as knowledge, gender, valor, things like that. Okay, so and of course social standing. Lastly, social standing can have value as well. Looking at social status and the fact that everybody wants it. The working class may try to attain it, but more than likely will not be able to hold on to it, and the ruling class will more than likely hold on to it. So that has some value too. Okay. So like I said, all of that, especially with the lower class, trying to elevate themselves is all temporary. So it is in this way of commodifying that allows us to be able to look at the worth that is put on social classes, genders, races, and a plethora of other traits when we look at literature, okay? Because this is all about looking at literature with a specific lens or specific glasses. We will be using the Marxist lens, or we will be putting on our Marxist glasses here, okay, so that we can be able to view the text as such, okay? So, with that being said, there are also other facets of Marxism that we could explore in depth, but I don't want to overwhelm anyone, okay? Especially those who have never dealt with Marxist theory or of its application to a literary text, okay? When looking at a text, it's important to look at the characters while kind of keeping a few things in mind that I kind of use this checklist a little bit in my head when I am trying to apply this theory to a text. 1. What caste does the character or group of characters belong to? This is very important. If you can order the characters and pop them in different castes, then we kind of have a better understanding of what's going on as far as what Marxist theory will dictate. 2. Who is or who are the character or characters in conflict with? Okay. For example, it may not be as clear cut as you may think. In in the book that we are going to be looking at, The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, it's pretty clear cut with where the social stratification goes. However, if you're reading a book, for example, where the characters were, were rich and famous people, or part of the, part of the social elite, but yet they are being oppressed, notice that word, oppressed by the government or something like that, there would still be this power struggle, sort of. So we could still apply a Marxist to that, because even the richest of the rich are still workers in some, in the hierarchy, are workers in some regard, because they are paying taxes to the crown or to the government or something like that. So so we said, who are they in conflict with? So we need to know that as well. So 3, throughout the narrative, what happens to these characters because of their socioeconomic place? Okay, we need to see, is there some kind of conflict? Are they being manipulated? Are they being oppressed? Are they trying to are they trying to ascend and get, if they're in the working class, and try to get into the bourgeoisie class? Or are they, what is it that they are trying to do? What is happening to them? Okay. And then 4, how are the characters influenced by any political, economic, or social elements of the narrative? Okay, this may play a part as well. And when I say political, I also mean, political can, in my eyes, mean kind of like governmental as well. So we're looking at things like anybody who is in a place of authority. So we're talking about police, we're talking about judges, magistrates, things of that nature. We're talking about bosses. We're talking about if it's a family type of unit sort of thing, we would look at the parents versus the children sort of thing. So we're just trying to find out, how are these characters being influenced? If we were to pick a character or pick a cast, we're that way, once we know these things, we can start to see how Marxism can be looked at into the text. Okay, so and the last thing that we talk about, or that I like to always keep in mind, is what traits are being commodified. Okay, we want to see, is there something that's being commodified? Is it someone's intellect? Is it because someone can run fast? Is it because someone can lift heavy things and put it up and down? Is it because someone has a specific skill? Is it that because someone is the only female out of a bunch of males for breeding or something like that? I mean, because these are all things that, once again, have put a value in. Maybe it's race, maybe it's a foreigner in a different country. Would they have high social status or low social status? Would they have high value because they are a foreigner, or from within the narrative, or would they not? So these are all things that you have to take into consideration. Okay. So, by taking a moment when you are starting to read a text, by taking a moment to kind of try to answer these questions, or at least have these questions in the back of your mind, one can start to peel the layers of the narrative back, kind of like that of a banana, okay, to end up exposing the social and political issues housed within, okay. That is very important to be able to do if you are trying to apply a theory, is to be able to know, okay, what is the theory and how do I apply it? Okay, so now that you have a basic understanding, okay, of Marxism and how it can be used to look at a piece of literary text, and I would like to say ahead of time, if for some reason you are still unclear as to what Marxism is and how it works, if you are confused, I would encourage you to rewatch the beginning of this video, and also look in the resource part of this lesson plan, where there are other videos that are linked, so that you can refresh yourself. I may not be explaining it in a way that is conducive to the way that you may be able to learn it, but one of those presenters in an alternate video may. Okay, so now that I've got that out of the way, let's look at The Outsiders, okay, which you were all given to read. And this novel, really, when you look at it, this novel is about what? It's about two clashing factions, right? So, what are the two clashing factions? The Socias and the Greasers, right? So, why don't you do me a favor and why don't you take out a piece of paper and a pen and let's do a little bit of mapping, okay? Because this is something that I like to do here. So, what are some of the descriptors that we can use for each group, okay? So if we were to have a piece of paper and we were to just split it vertically, so we have two columns. In one column we could write at the top Soc, S-O-C, and at the other we could write Greaser, okay? So you guys make sure to be my illustrators, okay, so that we can get this concept put down on paper, okay? So first, so we have the Socias. So what are some descriptors that we could use for each group as far as what shows that they belong in the ruling class or in the working class? Well, for one, let's look at dress style, okay? So dress style, for the Socias usually wear something like ski jackets, tan colored jackets, striped, checkered, or madras shirts, and sweaters as well, right? So they kind of dress a little bit, preppy, let's say. Whereas the Greasers, they usually wear t-shirts, leather jackets, blue jeans, boots, pretty much, not as preppy. And in the book, I believe that Dallas even gave Ponyboy his jacket, right? So the Greasers were hand-me-downs as well, right? So that kind of looks at their socioeconomic status there, right? Okay, so next, let's look at transportation. So when I look at transportation, when I'm reading through the narrative, I see that, for example, Randy, who is a Soc, he's got a nice Mustang, doesn't he? And it seems like the Greasers, from what I can envision, the Greasers kind of have more of kind of like the old fix-em-uppers, right? They don't have the latest model vehicle or anything like that. So we can kind of see that socioeconomically, that would kind of go in to say that the Socias are more on the ruling class and the Greasers are more on the working class, but we're not done. I'm just wanting to hammer this home, okay? Transportation, we just talked about. So let's talk about geographical locations, where they live, okay? So the Socias live in more of an affluent neighborhood, right? And for example, if you were wondering where I got that from, I am looking to a quote that I have later in the plan. But they're basically, what it is it's talking about, Cherry is saying, I'll bet that the Socias have it made. We rich kids, the West Side Socias. So the West Side Socias. So we're looking at the West Side is the affluent neighborhood side, okay? So that means that, nicer houses, bigger yards, more manicured yards, things like that. Whereas the Greasers, it sounds like they don't live on the West Side. They live on the proverbial other side of the tracks. And so they are more from a working class neighborhood, right? I mean, let's look at it like that. I mean, look at Pony's brother, and look at the fact that he works the jobs that he works. He's working and had to drop out of school, couldn't go to college because he had to work. It's part of the working class, right? So let's look at reputation. And when I say reputation, we're looking at this political or social type of thing. Are there any stigmas, or anything that are put on these groups. Okay, so with the socias, I mean, the socias are kind of seen as being kind of like good kids, right? I mean, they're affluent, they dress well, you know, they come from presumably good families, that sort of thing. However, the reputation of the greasers is that, you know, they have conflicts with police and authority figures, right? Um, uh, Lots of conflicts with police, which shows once again where they are in the classes. Okay, in the classes, I think now it is pretty, you know, it's becoming pretty apparent where each one of these characters belong. Right now, there are maybe a couple that may temporarily flip, but then they come right back. And lastly, let's talk about hairstyle, okay? So hairstyle. So the hairstyle of the socias seems to be that of being clean shaven and have semi-beetle haircuts, okay? Which means that kind of short, not short, but not, you know, long and unkept, okay? So with the greasers, it seems to be different, right? Greasers, they say greasers because they put some kind of product in their hair. Their hair is typically longer, right? Or at least for Ponyboy, pre-conflict longer, right? So there is almost the sense of value put on having long hair in this group. So now that we have these descriptors, can you easily fit now which caste fits in which category of the working class and which one in the bourgeoisie? We can see that the socias are clearly the ruling class, and we can see that the greasers are clearly the working class, right? Okay. So if you're unclear about that, you know, let's figure out, you know, why. What arguments might you have to where one of the characters or more are should belong in a different class or caste than where they are now? Okay. So if you agree with the socias being the ruling class and the greasers being the working class, then that means we have our characters pretty well characterized, right? So let's look at a couple of excerpts from the novel and put on our Marxist glasses, okay? And let's look at what happens to each one of the casts, okay? We'll look at like a member, or we will pick like a spokesperson here and there for each cast. So for the first example, we're going to look at Dallas, okay? And there is a quote on page 10, and it runs over to page 11 in The Outsiders. And it says, he, meaning Dallas, had quite a reputation. They have a file on him at the police station. He had been arrested. He got drunk. He rode in rodeos. He lied, cheated, stole, rolled drunks. He did everything. I didn't like him, but he was smart, and you had to respect him. So, we can see that Dallas, who is part of the working class, has had run-ins with the law even before the narrative begins, because he has this long police record, right? This long history with the police and his illegal activities ultimately leads him to be gunned down by the police at the conclusion of the story, right? Dallas is never able to elevate himself socioeconomically by robbing, by rolling drunks or anything like that. Maybe temporarily for the night, but he ends up descending back into the working class once again, right? So his character ends up meeting his end at the hands of the oppressor, right? Of the police, okay? So that would be one way to look at one of the castes and you know what happens to the member of each caste, okay? But then we can let's look at the ruling class, a member of the ruling class, specifically Cherry, okay? Because the working class seems to think that the ruling class just has it so easy. They don't really understand what problems that the ruling class could have. And so Cherry ends up saying, and this happens on page 31, Cherry ends up saying, Cherry no longer looks sick, only sad. I'll bet you think the Socias have it made. The rich kids, the West Side Socias. I'll tell you something, Ponyboy, and it may come as a surprise. We've had troubles you've never even heard of. You want to know something? She looked me straight in the eye. Things are rough all over. So, here, Cherry is showing and is admitting, hey, I am part of the ruling class, but I have problems too, okay? And you meaning Ponyboy, trying to put value on things being rough, maybe being a commodity, right? Cherry is saying, no, but things are rough all over. Everyone has it rough, even our side. So if you're putting a value on it, we are just as valuable as you are, even more so because our problems that we have, you can't even imagine our problems. So once again, Cherry is putting Pony in his place and saying, look, you are the oppressed, I'm the oppressor. Things may be bad, but for me, you don't know what kind of problems I have. Mine are far more important than yours are, okay? So, like I was saying, Cherry alludes to the fact that even the ruling class have their own problems that the working class just wouldn't or couldn't understand, okay? The fact that Cherry is hanging out with Ponyboy has serious repercussions too, doesn't it? Because we're having a member from each caste kind of intermingling, right? And it'll can very well have serious repercussions. When they're stopped while walking after the movie, if you remember early in the book, by Cherry's boyfriend and a few other socias in the Mustang, Cherry even admits, but we'd better go with them, Ponyboy. I mean, if I see you in a hall at school or someplace and I don't say hi, well, it's not personal or anything, but... So, what happened to Cherry? Cherry, for a minute, or for a little while, she didn't seem to have any problems hanging out with them at the movies, right? And everything seemed to be hunky-dory, right? Well, what happened to Cherry? Well, just like with Dallas, she's unable to escape her class or her caste, her place, okay? So even though she descended into the working class to mingle with the common folk, I suppose I could put it like that, she ultimately returns to her rightful place with the haves, okay, and abandons, albeit in public for the most part, but she does come and give a little bit of information throughout the narrative. She abandons the have-nots for the most part, at least publicly. Next, let's look and see if we can find an example of any character from either caste who is being influenced by political, economic, or social elements, okay? And the example that I picked, I said for this example that I am going to look at the greasers and the way that the media portrayed them after the slaying of the Soch and the burning of the old church, okay? So the title in the newspaper article on page 90 in the novel reads, Juvenile Delinquents Turn Heroes, right? So now, even though the slaying was justified by reading the narrative, the media still looks at Johnny and Ponyboy as juvenile delinquents, right? Whether it was, I doubt that they had a Freedom of Information Act back then, so it isn't as if they actually looked up court documents to see what their police record or anything was, although I suppose maybe they did, but it is far more likely that they just saw them as greasers, so they automatically get labeled as juvenile delinquents, okay? Now, art, or the media, is making sure that even though they will be temporarily elevated as heroes, because for the sake of selling more newspapers, so the commodity of the newspaper too, and putting a value on this story, they will always fall back to delinquents, and that the art who is made by the ruling class, right, the owner of the newspaper, the business factory, will always be there to remind them of their place by labeling them as such, okay? So, Right now, what I would also like to do is I want to make sure that you guys are understanding how Marxism is being applied here. Hopefully you are. If you are not, I encourage you to once again watch the earlier parts of this virtual lecture so that you can be brought up to speed, okay? But this next part I want to show is a very, very important message in this book that directly relates to the ideology of Marxism. Okay, so even if you were unclear before, this should really hit it home. Okay, so here is my example that I give for this. So when Randy is talking to Ponyboy about his heroics, about Ponyboy's heroics, and about the upcoming Rumble, he ends up stating, and here's a quote from him, "And tonight, people get hurt in Rumbles, maybe killed. I'm sick of it because it doesn't do any good. You can't win. You know that, don't you?" And when I remained silent, he went on, "You can't win. Even if you whip us, you'll still be where you were before, at the bottom. And we'll still be the lucky ones with all the breaks. So, it doesn't do any good, the fighting and the killing. It doesn't prove a thing. We'll forget it if you win, or if you don't. Greasers will still be greasers, and socias will still be socias." And this happened on page 98. Now, this passage right there, it should sound really familiar, right? What is being discussed here? It is just reinforcing that socio-stratification that is apparent between the working class and the ruling class, and that a member of the ruling or of the working class can only ascend temporarily before finding his place once again in his original caste. Does that make sense? I'm thinking it should, because we're taking it right out of the narrative there. Okay. So lastly, let's kind of talk about commodification. Okay. So for commodification, for example, the greasers put value on any in their group who are good fighters and tough, right? You don't have to necessarily like a person, but if they're a good fighter, or if they're tough, or if they're loyal or something like that, then they are, their value is high, right? And with the socias, it seems like it might be a popularity thing too. Whether they are, there's value in this popularity. It seems like Randy feels as if he is more popular, or that his class is personified when he is with Cherry, when everything is right with him and Cherry, right? So that would be a commodification as well. Ponyboy too, if you think about it, a commodification. Ponyboy puts a lot of value on the length of his hair, right? Remember when he had to cut it off and he had to dye it? Without his hair, he thinks that he has somehow lost value, doesn't he? And he kind of takes it pretty seriously. These are just two surface examples of some examples of commodification in S.E. Hinton's book, The Outsiders. Can you think of any others? So if you can, take a minute and try to think of any other examples of commodification, or maybe of different classes where it's really pointing out, oh, this class conflict or that class conflict. Of course, the Rumble, is an obvious one, right? The Rumble is a conflict, made with fists, right? So I would say that would be a pretty big example right there. But there are certainly a fair amount of conflicts, examples out there. So this is the end of the video lecture component. I hope that you have gained a better understanding as to what Marxist theory is and how to apply it to a literary text. I think that by using The Outsiders, which has some really clear-cut examples, it should help you to further understand how to look at a theory, and understand it, and how to then take that theory and run with it with a piece of literary text, okay? Because I think that I think it is really important to be able to take a theory such as Marxism and apply it to a literary text. Apply it to a lot of things, not only literary text. When you're bored sometime, try to apply it to if you're watching a TV show or a movie or a commercial. There are a plethora of different avenues, different mediums that you can use many theories that are out there, this one being Marxism, and try to start breaking things down and try to get to the message that is underneath it all about the classes and about the haves and the have-nots, okay? So I welcome any questions. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to contact me, and I will try my best to put aside any concerns that you have, or try to answer any questions that you may have. So the last thing that I want you to know is if for some reason you did not have access to the Outsiders book, it is written on the lesson plan that there is a digital version of it that is available online. It looks like for free just by doing a Google search, but I did put the link in the lesson plan. Also, I would really like, now that you have a firmer grasp, I would hope, of Marxist theory and how to apply this theory, I would ask you then to try to write a one-page, double-spaced reflection paper that highlights how you were able to grasp the concept of Marxism and the application of that theory to a piece of literature text, or literary text, excuse me. Any struggles about the concepts of applications should be mentioned, so that way you can kind of talk your way through it, as well as how you have or how you plan on working through it to gain a little bit of clarity and better understanding, okay? That is very, very important. And you will find that Marxism is pretty prevalent in a lot of media that is out there. So underneath this virtual lecture, I am also going to pop in a little a video of a song. It's actually a cover of a song that pretty much talks about Marxism in its own way, and it is called To Have and Have Not. So, once again, I appreciate you taking the time out to listen to my lecture. I would like to thank my instructor and all of my classmates in 675, in English 675 this semester, who without their knowledge, insight, and comments, I would not have been able to construct this this lesson plan and carry it through to fruition. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, just make sure that you know, when you're looking at texts, try to look beyond the surface, okay? The words are on the surface. Try to look between the words, and chances are that you will find a deeper meaning. Happy summer, everybody.